have the luxury of waiting very much longer.
Changing course, what does that mean exactly in your mind?
What I have recommended, and what the majority of Democrats are behind, is what we refer to as the Levin-Reed approach. Number one, we need to resolve the political problems within Iraq. They've been allowed to fester. They keep being put off. That means, how are you going to guarantee the reasonable Sunni majority that they're going to have a place in this government? How are you going to distribute the oil revenues so people don't feel like they're being ripped off? This is one of the key issues for the political resolution of the sectarian violence in Iraq. Secondly, we've got to have the international neighbors take a stake in this. They have a lot at risk, and some of them are obviously playing in this. They're supporting various of the factions. A number of us have called on the president to convene a high-level contact group where we bring those regional powers together and where we put them on the spot. And finally, the president's strategy has basically been, when the Iraqis stand up, we'll stand down. Well, the Iraqis have been standing up, but they haven't been fighting. That's why putting it on them that we are going to have a phased redeployment, moving our troops out so they have to stand and fight for themselves, I think is the only way to get their attention focused and get a better result.
Give us a timetable for that phasing out.
Well, when we originally proposed this, we said that 2006 should be a year of transition. We're running out of time in 2006. The chairman of the Armed Services Committee, the Republican senator from Virginia, John Warner, came back from his most recent trip and said, we're running out of time. We've got 2-3 months left to change course. So I think this needs to be done immediately. I know the president is holding meetings. I hope that he will listen to voices on both sides of the aisle.
But Senator, are there similarities between Vietnam and the war in Iraq?
They're very different historically, culturally. The similarity may be that we're in a difficult position and we need to figure out how we're going to achieve our mission. I think, thankfully, what happened to my opponent and others when they came home from Vietnam has not happened. We have been, as a nation, behind our troops. Unfortunately, they are often put in harm's way, and our tactics and strategies are not designed to bring them out of danger, bring them home as soon as possible, and that's what I hope changes.
You obviously want to bring the troops back as soon as possible, as you say. Is there a time when the nation should just say, hey, we should bring the troops back, and no matter what happens there?
I'm not ready to do that. I don't think that's smart. I think that sends, a wrong signal to the insurgents, to the militias, and to others who have a stake in Iraq going forward. Just as I don't think the president stay the course, we're in it no matter what, is a strategy either. I'm looking for a smart, tough, effective strategy. I hope that's what we're going to see in a very short period of time.
Thank you,
Mr. Spencer, in the interest of time, since we each asked follow-up questions of Senator Clinton, we'll give you a little more than a 30-second rebuttal. Go right ahead.
Okay. The question was what? What's my position? I mean, she was talking so long on it. What was the original question?
Do you have a rebuttal to what she said? Do you have a problem with what she's proposing in terms of this plan to phase out, to change course?
Let me get to a point then that gets lost in all of the, all of the politics, if you will, that we're a nation at war, and the conduct of senators and congresspeople in Washington are critical. And, and you're right, the nation, I don't think, and I pray every day, has not reached the point of the disastrous situation of the Vietnam War. I do not compare the war itself in Iraq to Vietnam. It is different structurally, politically, socially, economically, and everything. But I do compare the home front. Now, we're not at a bad point yet, and I pray we do not get there. The only way we'll get there is irresponsible conduct by elected officials that will bring us there, that will confuse the American people on polling, on pull the troops out now, we surrender, we give up. That is dangerous in this dangerous world we're facing right now. And that's my concern. How do you conduct yourself? As I said again, how do you have the debate? You do not call people liars and incompetent and fire in the middle of war. There's an intellectual, senatorial, or congressperson way of doing it that unites the nation in these difficult times. Let's move forward as a nation. Let's unite. And another thing I want to make, Dominic, if I may, is terminology. When people talk about, state of course, strategy, tactics, end game, things of that nature, I've seen many politicians in Washington, not only Senator Clinton, Senator John Kerry and Dick Durbin and many, many others, who play politics with these terms and they don't even know what the terms mean, as Tony Snow is having such a difficult time today going over it. We have to all take a deep breath, find out what we're talking about in these, and not live in a bumper sticker world or a pandering world to get votes for future elections.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer.
Dominic, could I just have a quick re-rebuttal?
Go ahead, Senator Clinton.
In the middle of the Civil War, the bloodiest war that our nation ever fought, Abraham Lincoln did not hesitate to change generals. We have a Secretary of Defense who is not credible any longer. We need to change the Secretary of Defense to send a signal to our troops and to the rest of the world that we can do better than what we're doing.
Mr. Spencer.
Dominic, here's the point, and this is a critical point. By the way, I didn't know in the instructions that I should have brought my own cheering section. Here's the critical point. Abraham Lincoln changed generals. He was president. It wasn't done by senators or congresspeople. The commander-in-chief made the decision. And let's get back to structure here. You're not president yet, Mrs. Clinton, so do not call for that. The president was put there by the people. And let's unite on this. And again, I'm going to say this one more time. Let's unite and calm down and take a deep breath. We have hundreds and thousands of soldiers in harm's way that can be listening to this debate. Let's tone it.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. And now we move from Sandra to my colleague, Jim Maroney. Jim?
Thank you, Dominic. A few moments ago, Senator, you said that New Yorkers know what they're voting for. 6 years ago, they knew that you had promised 200,000 jobs for this economically embattled region that we are speaking from tonight. 6 years later, most of Western New York wants to know, where are the jobs?
I am very proud of the record that I've worked on to help create jobs and bring people together. I would love to see what I proposed actually enacted. I proposed broadband deployment across upstate New York so that the entire area was connected globally. Unfortunately, the Bush administration didn't agree with that. I proposed tax credits to bring jobs to rural areas. Again, the Bush administration opposed that. So what I've tried to do is, despite what I see as the failed economic policies of this administration, to be creative, to work with our colleges, our universities, to work with our agricultural sector. I started an organization called New Jobs for New York to bring investors from New York City to see what we have upstate. So instead of them just investing overseas, they can actually invest here in Rochester or Albany or Syracuse or Buffalo. I've been working with our farmers on a program I started called Farm to Fork, because agriculture is still the first or second biggest industry in our state, and it's critical to upstate job development. Trying to get new markets, be more creative about how we get our wonderful produce, our fruits and everything into the New York City market, working with our vineyards and our wine producers. And I've also tried to create opportunities for upstate businesses to go on eBay, to expand their global reach. Now, I'm waiting for a new governor. I'm waiting for a new Congress, and perhaps I'll be able to get my plan passed, and we'll begin to see it working the way that I'd like to.
Would you call that a campaign promise out of your control?
I'd hoped that we would have continued the economic policies of the Clinton administration. When I made that proposal, I was hoping that upstate, which had kind of missed out on the job creation and economic growth of the 90s, would be able to catch that wave. And we've had some positive developments, but there's still a lot of work to be done. 6 years ago, we didn't yet have a recession. We didn't have the 9/11 attack. We didn't have high deficits. We didn't have the Bush policies. Thankfully, we escaped a plague of locusts. But we've had some challenges in the last 6 years. So I'm not discouraged. I'm just changing direction, trying to work in different ways, and helping people right here at home create these opportunities for themselves.
Mr. Spencer, how would you work in the Senate to reinvigorate this region's economy?
Well, first of all, if we did have a plague of locusts, you know whose fault it would be, right? George Bush. He's responsible for everything. When are you responsible, Senator Clinton? When are you responsible after 6 years? And you pledged 200,000 jobs. So if you're not responsible, then you're ineffective. You're an ineffective United States Senator from New York, and that's what I said in my opening. The time element. What would I do? I would do what I did in the past. I would cut taxes. I would vote for tax cuts. Senator Clinton, over 50 times, has opposed tax cuts. tax cuts that benefited New York State to the tune of $36 billion. That's what she voted against. And she continues to, and she said that the Bush tax cuts would ruin us as a nation. It's a way, but it's the wrong way, she said. Anybody check with the economy lately? The revenue coming in? The reduction in our debt? Have you checked on that lately? Everyone has millions and millions of jobs around the nation, except one area, New York. Why? High taxes. As a United States Senator, what would I do? I would use the power of that position to work with local officials, to vote tax cuts in Washington. Senator Clinton didn't. She hurt New Yorkers by not voting those tax cuts. Every single New Yorker benefited from the tax cuts. And you'll hear this phrase about tax cuts for the rich. Nonsense. You know, what is rich? A fireman in Buffalo who's married to a teacher who's got to pay the alternative minimum tax? They would have to if Senator Clinton had her way. So what would I do? Low taxes, like I did in the fourth largest city of the state. I cut taxes and created jobs. I want to do that around the state of New York, working with local officials and conducting the right votes in Washington.
Senator Clinton.
Well, I have supported and voted for middle-class tax cuts to make college tuition more affordable, to eliminate the marriage penalty, to look for ways to help finance long-term care. And I will continue to support and vote for middle-class tax cuts. At the same time, I've seen what was a balanced budget and a surplus when this president came into office dissipate. We are now facing the largest debt we've ever had, and the deficit numbers are misleading because they don't take into account how much has been borrowed from the Social Security Trust Fund. But I do believe that New York state taxes are too high. We have the highest state and local taxes in the country, and I am very much hopeful that soon-to-be Governor Spitzer will tackle that. He and I were together on Long Island last week speaking to a lot of people, firefighters, police officers, teachers, nurses, and their big complaint was the property tax. And I hope that we can stop the trickle-down economics coming out of Washington, because they pass mandates and then the costs get passed to the state and then they end up on the backs of local taxpayers, and that needs to stop.
Thank you, Senator Clinton. And now we go to my colleague, Juan Manuel Benitez. Juan?
Thank you, Dominic. Mrs. Spencer, you are in favor of building a 2,000-mile fence along the border with Mexico. If elected, that's what your website says. If elected senator, would you propose a construction of another fence along the Canadian border?
Very good. First of all, I haven't looked at my website probably in about 6 months. But anyway, I don't think it said 2,000-mile fence. I'm not in favor of that, because you do not have to build a 2,000-mile fence to secure a border. You know, I can go on a computer and Google Earth, and I can look in your backyard and tell you what shape your picnic table is. So we have the technology. The issue is we have to secure our border. This is a federal failure that goes back, you know, over, 3 decades. It's a federal failure. We have illegal immigrants coming in who are not being treated with any dignity. They're being exploited. So I think it's a fundamental issue. Secure the border, which they're working on now, but it's taking a painfully long time, and people are suffering accordingly. So secure the border. It doesn't have to be a 2,000-mile long fence, a 2,000-mile long security system, which would involve cameras, National Guard, or more Border Patrol, common sense solutions to securing a border. I don't think it's asking too much of a federal government in this sovereign nation of the United States of America, especially in a post-9/11 world where we have a hard time getting on an airplane with a razor, that terrorists could come through there. I'm not calling illegal immigrants terrorists, but come on, common sense. If I wanted to come into this country as a terrorist and they're out there and they wanted to do things, it's a nice port of entry. My position is very simple to the federal government that hasn't done it. One of my criticisms of President Bush, you know, why hasn't he done it? So I'm not afraid to say that the border is wide open, needs to be secured, and the people that are here are not living with any American citizenship and dignity. They're being exploited. I know that from being a mayor of a big city. I live with it.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer.
But be a nation of laws and secure the border.
But, Mr. Spencer, what about the Canadian border? Because the 9/11 terrorists are believed to come through the Canadian border. You're talking about anti-terrorism.
Yeah, well, again, the Canadian border, I think, let's be honest here, folks. I don't think we've had millions and millions of people come across the Canadian border on an illegal immigration issue. Do we have a security issue on the Canadian border? We have a security issue everywhere. We have a security issue at the Rochester airport. So we have security on the Canadian border, common sense security, by the way, that we're employing, and I think we'll continue to do that.
Thank you.